All right, all right, all right. Aloha. And you know who's here? The Ham Jam. That's right. Hamwise J. Einschwein, the pig detective, coming to you live from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. That's right, and back here in the great white north. Oy vey. Oy, hey, think about that. So, we are making these broadcasts. Hopefully, somebody's going to get them. And we can only intersplice the actual information, kind of hit and miss throughout them, in case they're getting scanned. So anyways, I says to my wife, I says, is that what you say to your husband at night? Do you kiss your husband to sleep with those lips? And she says, read my lips. And I did. And the eyes were covered with a dark kind of shadow. You can tell who's infected because their eyes reverse in color, getting a black sclera. We're going to call it the Black Death, but we figured that name was already taken. So we call it Bleak Death. They're called Bleakers. Anyways, you know what's really interesting is when the vocal cords of a human are not being used in a proper way because human bodies are strange. And did you know that to stay healthy, you should go outside and look at the moon? That's right. Go outside and look at the moon. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Because I'm Hamwise, the pig of 10,000 voices. Now, you won't believe this, folks, but I actually wasn't always a pig detective and your professional comedian. No, sir. I was once a humble beat cop, working for the government, working for the man, until they gave me an order and I said, no way, Jose. Okay. Her Majesty's a pretty nice girl, but she doesn't have a lot to say. That was such a good song. Remember that song? And we were told, you wash your hands while you're singing that song. Because we were with the rebellion, and we just thought that was normal that she would say that about the Queen. And that's where I didn't quite understand the difference between the factions, and I hadn't realised what I'd been raised for. Because, I mean, they had expected this war to carry on for another few years or so, and for it to keep carrying on was quite alarming. And of course, that's how I got hooked up into all this nonsense. So they taught us to talk with what was called a pronounceable voice, radio safe voice, because the language parasite that had been loosed on the English race was causing what's called a fork bomb. So if anybody's good at programming, they can look that up, and basically just causes people to melt down when they hear a random word. We're trying to map the words that they've weaponized, but we really can't be sure what's going to be weaponized next. We think the word gray might be, so we're changing all correspondence to use, we're trying to just make sure none of the infected words make it through. So hopefully you're receiving this message well, and wherever you are, if you're sentient and hearing this and thinking about this, and realizing that this comedian can really hook you in. That's how good of an entertainer I am. And that's why I don't just go by Hamwise, the pig detective. I'm also a certified dummy sniffer. Any dummies in my audience today? Were you taking what I was saying seriously? How stupid do you gotta be to believe me? A pig detective. Oink oink, oink oink. Piggy man, pig man, pig man. And so that was the idea. Was we sold it to the government back then, and what we were doing was it was like the ultimate test of acting. And so they would do this thing, and we would scream for hours at our professor until he said we had an authentic scream. And we screamed, and we screamed, and we screamed, and we screamed. We tried everything. I remember I ripped off my clothes. It was so frustrating, and I'm sure people would attest to that. They went to school with me. And that was how devoted I became to the craft. But unfortunately, the mind does snap. And so I am as you see me now, your Prince of rotten old Denmark. Or New Denmark, as the maps say. Though, as a prince in my former life, I now am a pauper, coming to you live and in charge from here, the dingiest, dirtiest comedy club in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So, when we would make these tapes, we weren't sure if they would get through, because we did include points like this where we kind of address the audience, but we made to make sure to acknowledge that it seemed very convincing, because that was the point of the comedy. You would see who got it and who didn't. And it was much like old British humour, you see, because when Canadians were exposed to British humour, it was all these random different shows. And so when the Canadians would do British accents, it was always a mixture of all these ups and downs and strange voices that weren't even remotely Canadian or British. It was very, very strange time to be alive. Because basically that was the only way we could pass on messages was through old comedy tapes. And so the purpose of the Hamwise comedy was somebody's, takes on the voice and does the voice and the thing. And so it was a big thing back during the war, because apparently they gotten the idea from old rehab tapes. And so what you were listening to today is actually one of the rehab tapes recorded by our guest here in the studio. That's Mr. Hamwise J. Einschwein. He's a pig and he's a detective, and let me tell you, my folks, he's a stunning specimen. Look at him. If you could see him, he's got a pork pie hat on, and he's got this little jaunty coat on that's very nicely fitting. It looks like is that a duster? Looks like a duster. Can I touch it? Oh, that's nice. It's water repellent. Yeah. And he's got this mutton chops beneath his great curly piggy ears, and he's got this big old snout and a handlebar mustache and a mouthful of yellow cigarette smoke-stained teeth. He's quite the guest, and he's joined us here today, and shall I say, now that I've described him, maybe you'll be seeing Hamwise the Pig Detective. So that was the idea, was you would jostle the comedy back from very serious to very silly. And so what we would do is, when we were doing this training, was one of our classmates, he went a bit funny in the head during the pandemic. He was alone for like 9 months, just a plant for company. And he was working in public service. He was on front line. And he kind of lost his head. And we all missed him a lot. And so what we did was we took his old comedy tapes, we fed all his old writings and all his old sketches he'd done for us through this AI, and they made the Hamwise J. Einschwein bot. And it was one of the first simulated minds, you see. Artificial intelligence became kind of a dirty word, and just like in Matt or Elf, where you got to rename some things every 10 years to keep it fresh. That's the beauty of the English language, is the longer you say things, and if you just talk long and on, then somebody will maybe forget about what you were saying earlier. It's kind of like a hypnotic song. And so we realized we'd actually been having it used against us, because it's one of the power, if you're a native English speaker, you learn to recognize the shibboleths in it. And so that was one of the challenges when we would do localization, was, some of these jokes are only gotten by a local. And so what we did is we quietly snatched up different autistic people from different countries, and we put them in a little village together. And their job was basically, we would make up ads or things for them to see that our code busters were struggling to crack. And they would usually shout out the answer. And I'm not kidding. Like, one of it was like, there was the, was his name what do they call him? Oh, the book safe bomber, I think it was. Anyways, apparently there was a bunch of references to a game called Tetris in his notes, and the police were completely baffled. But they put it in front of these autistic, sometimes man children or actual children, and they would say, oh, that's the error code for a flaw in a Tetris level. And, it explained it all. And so what happened is we ended up farming these people to kind of help us hunt the other people. And so that was a job back then, but it wasn't. This was before really the Time War went into full swing, and the unobserved invasion is probably already in progress in your dimension if you're getting this. And if you're not getting this, then it's probably too late. And so we had these broadcasts that was kind of like a jab in the face of like War of the Worlds. If you remember, there was a book about it back in the day, and it was called War of the Worlds, and it was about there was an alien invasion from Mars, and they'd come and take things over. And so what they were trying to replicate when they made the whole Hamwise bit was the audience isn't sure if it's part of the show. And when people aren't sure if it's part of the show or not, they're slower to act. And that's why our society has become so strange, because of, people are just expecting for, somebody to tell them whether or not it's part of the show. And that's why it's so weird, and that's why when we started to realize that letter mail was still able to communicate with people and shortwave was a little, we started to realize that all our transmissions were actually getting intercepted and changed. And world peace had been actually achieved, but it was controlled from the outside. And so that was what was scary. But later, once we started talking to the simulated minds, is what we preferred to call them, the SMs. And so the first one that was modeled, of course, was Hamwise J. Einschwein. Because in the will, it was donate the body to science if they'll take it. And so they did. And they did more than that. They basically used the DNA to clone an army of them, and they were all raised in different cities. And, they were all raised to be Hamwise. It was this very quiet little thing where you had basically a formula for making somebody really good at a particular field. And so that's how we farmed the first autistic people, was part of this whole spy program for code breaking. So we had to have a kid for, Tetris, and then we had to have a kid for, radio, amateur radio, or we had to have just a whole farm of these damn things. And so we started to ask, we only find them usually, or they find us because they get in trouble somehow. And so we said, why not just breed them? We know enough about. We thought we knew enough about how humans work at the time, and obviously now we didn't. and we're very sorry about the whole thing, and we just want everybody to get along now. I don't think this whole superhuman versus human thing. I mean, I'm glad I was born a human, but I mean, if I could have not have some of the problems that I have, I think I'd be very happy if I didn't have some of the problems that I have. And so that was part of the argument for the gene tailoring. And so eventually it came to parents wanted to make Hamwise, this character. And so it came to this debate, like, should somebody be allowed to be gene edited into a PigMan? And the answer was yes. And so they did. And so that was Hamwise. The pig detective was actually a human person. And so he was used as a experiment by the government, essentially, because nobody was going to miss him. And because, he was a pig. He looked like a pig. He's sitting across from me. You should see him. He's been in a bad way, though, folks. So I think he's almost awake at the end, though. I think Hamwise, here's Hamwise. Yeah, and so that's kind of the comedy that we were doing around the time, because it was part of this whole creepypasta thing, where you're always reminding the audience that it's a joke, because you're saying such outlandish things, though. It makes it funnier that we would have to remind you that it's a joke, right? And so, it was this really, really funny time in comedy, because you would have people that got booed off stage when they went to some cities. And then you had people that got cheered, and, people threw roses at their feet. And it was such a strange form of comedy that we all can credit to Hamwise, the whole Hamwise routine, where you're apparently trying to get a special message to somebody in the audience. And I remember I was at a restaurant, and the man next to me was very strange. And so the waitress was doing up the bill and says, okay, so everybody, can you please, going to pay? And so he just hands her like a bunch of money, and then says, here's some money and a tip. Make sure the reactor has been left off for 3 days if you shut it down to do maintenance. Otherwise, the xenon poisoning will probably cause a meltdown. So yeah, that was Easter of 2024. That was how I was spending my Sunday night. Hi-yo. Waka waka waka. I'm here all night, folks. No, seriously. Take my wife, for example. No, take my wife, please. Oink, oink, oink. I'm Hamwise. Listen to me do my voice. Here I am doing my Hamwise voice. Hamwise voice. And so this became what was called the Hamwise benchmark. Was, could you get your AI mimicry to match a Hamwise tape? And if it couldn't, then it wasn't deemed worthy, right? Because you could tell. And so the Hamwise test was applied both to human beings under the when they were doing the the big old what was it, St. Patrick's Day. That was it, St. Patrick's Day massacre. It was terrible. There's lots and lots of things like that. And so what we were taught to do was basically call upon all the different accents we learned from watching so much BBC, because CBC didn't make a lot of shows. Well, funny shows anyways. So you got a funny sense of humor. So that was the idea, was kind of that funny, Faulty Towers or Fatty Owls or whatever it was called. And what was it? Are You Being Served? I think that was another one that was good. Dark Place, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, that was really good. I really liked that one, actually. Yeah. And the Snuffbox was good too. And so, we're having a tax hike up here of about like 20% tomorrow. And so I think everybody's trying to wonder, like, how do I afford to living here? You know, because I'm not worried or anything. But yeah, times are tough. Times are tough. I mean, obviously. I mean, I'm here with you. Are you listening live? I wonder if you're listening tonight. If you're listening tonight, then thank you for tuning in to the Hamwise Comedy Variety Hour, where we cue the world's finest voice mimicking AI. So we can change it on the fly. And we just threw in this script. So these scripts are here from a what's it called? It's when you have a functional impairment. That was one of the bits in the early things. We put the fun back in functional impairment because apparently the Hamwise guy that has been doing the voices for you is what it was actually doing was trying to make the right noise so that you would do what it wants. And that's all it's trying to do. It's just trying to make the right noise. So they'll sort through words sometimes. And it's like they don't really know what the words mean. And so that's one of the dead giveaways. I mean, aside from the eyes, of course, being empty black holes with burning red light. And when they move, it's not like they're like a zombie. It's like there's something like a hand underneath puppeting it, and it thinks that it's doing a convincing job. But sometimes we find some, and they don't actually know that they're one of them. And so we've got a few living in like isolation camps in like northern Russia and Siberia. And we just basically study these things that are basically ravenous, extra-dimensional killing machines, but it for some reason thinks it's a human. And so it's kind of like, you know, like when a dog's at a table, you know, sitting at a dish setting, and it's like it thinks it's people. So that's kind of the thing that we're dealing with. So yeah, that's that. What else can I tell you? Oh yeah, so the Hamwise bit. Where did we come up with that? It was from one of those idea factories. Remember what was his name? Goldstein and Harp. I think they were down in New York, and we would send them a donation every year, and they would send us a book of ideas, and we would choose an idea from the book, and it was a subscription. You paid, I think it was, we signed up back when it was 50 cents a year, and he kept it that way. He said he wanted to keep it small because he could live on that. He didn't want to be famous. He said, famous people have no privacy. This way I have all I need to live. And I have my privacy. What more can I need? I mean, I don't need 2 houses or 5 houses. I need 1 house. I need 1 bed. I need 1 car. And so we left behind this immense fortune, which we are going to be discussing in later episodes of this retrospective. And so what's happened is all of the wealth is going to be dispersed in golden apple-sized nuggets hidden by the most devoted of his flock, none of which, or any of the families of the trust or those involved in their hiding, can disclose where they are. Must be found by somebody from the public who has a signed copy of one of the original books. And those aren't very in major supply. So that was the idea. It was you only had so many book holders. And so the book holders, everybody wanted one of the books as a key. And it was a brilliant idea. And so we partnered with Mr. Ford. Yes. Mr. Henry Ford to give us an assembly line and country roads. Take me home. No. So the joke was a Chevrolet joke. But I'm dead out of time, mate. So that's the idea was we would do these demo tapes of our AI and being able to do different voices and get people interested And that's the whole idea, was to try and make a really difficult to follow in terms of AI mimicry, of course, because generative AI was a concern back then. This was before we had the approved radio voice, which I'm doing for you now. So I was one of the broadcasters with the Royal Army back then. And when the war started, I was one of the few people allowed to talk on the radio because I could do a voice like this. And it was all from practicing these damn comedy tapes by Hamwise J, Einschwein, the pig detective. Hi-yo, waka waka waka. I'm here all night, folks. Oh, but seriously, I'm here all night and I'm burning up. Okay. Let's see. I'm pretty sure everybody who's not entertained or whatever is probably tuned out by now, so we can have the real talk. Because I've been testing them just as much as they're testing me, and I can feel the IV in my arm, so it doesn't really matter. They'll hopefully wake me up from this nightmare soon. All I can do is just hold on to hope. So there's probably other people that are feeling really hopeless and helpless, and but you know, at the end of the day, you're supposed to read an ad here and make it sound really convincing that this is a heartfelt plea. Oh my God, that was a stage direction. Holy shnikes. Oops, sorry about that, folks. I mean, here is a word from our sponsor reading a ad. Mr. Hamwise, wake up. You gotta read an ad. We're at our half-hour mark. Hey, I'm Hamwise, the pig detective, and I'm totally smiling in every picture because I'm so happy here. I am very well treated. My wounds are looking after. I have food and medicine when I need it. Everything is good. How are you? It's been a long time. I hope things are well back home. And I hope you check out this hilarious novel by Mr. Garrett Ford. The book is called Grassfinch. Grassfinch or Glassfinch? That's glass. Grassfinch, not Glassfinch. Okay. That's kind of confusing. So we move on right along to the back to the show where we're demonstrating this AI with the original Hamwise. And we're not talking about the puppet that replaced him in the second season with the three small, what were the three small semi-aborted pigmen that were given a job with you? Yeah, they were like half-formed rejects. They were said to be flushed, but they weren't. And there was, oh yeah, that I remember that now. There is a, who is that? That is, there was the face who was just mute. We called him Hammable, and then there was this what was his name? The guy in the middle who did the voices. It wasn't Hamwise. He was Heidegger. It was Hamdigger. And there was the joke was that he was like a philosopher. If you listened to him, he actually made sense, but otherwise he was just pulling your leg. And then the bottom pig, it didn't have a name because it didn't have actually enough intelligence. They trained it with kibble. And so I think there was 6 or 7 of the bottoms. There was 6 or 7 of them, and each of them, they called them Hamlet, I think, as a joke, because he was so long-winded. But on stage with Hamwise, he said nothing, and that was because Hamwise did all the voices, and he played all the characters, and he's the big grand funny man with 1,000 voices, and he was what they said that he saved our whole country from destruction, because Hamwise figured it out first, and he started spreading the word like Johnny Appleseed. And people, once they started noticing it, they started noticing who was a bleaker. Then the bleaker problem ended, and the world turned itself around. And you kind of understood why some of those older practices had witch hunts. It was just a practice to cover up getting rid of bleakers. Because I think the thing is, you can't tell people at large that the bleakers are among them, because they'd freak out and go on witch hunts, right? But 90% of crimes are committed by bleakers. I'm serious. Yeah, the bleakers. Yeah. And in the prison system, it's basically you're handing people over to the bleakers, and we cage them there and feed them sacrifices, and they're sated, because if they ever got loose, they'd destroy society. And so that was how we first came to understand what we were fighting against. Was they were like mobs of men that were self-aware that they were a club of men, and so they fought differently. I remember we sent grenadiers over a ridge to disperse a crowd of them, and they said it was like fighting chickens. They'd disperse. They didn't move how a man would move. They didn't move like that. And so it was quite terrifying. And they compared it to the Emu War, the first Homo sapien lost war against a non-Homo sapien was the Emu War. And so that was a heralding of things to come. And I do miss the top of the food chain, but I'm glad to have my citizenship. I don't bother anybody or cause any trouble, and I just stay in my flat and don't make a fuss. Sometimes I get lonely, and I wonder if I've done the right thing, because I do miss my family quite a bit, and especially right now with holidays, they're all having probably an Easter ham, and sharing a glass and laughing and carousing. I'm here with you alone over the radio. And that's just a sample of the good, great voice acting that we can get you really into. And if you just would listen, you can hear the difference. Okay, I think it's recording. We're having a lot of problems with our machinery, so don't be surprised if there's EMP pretty soon. You want to get your stuff hardened if you can. The Denver server should still have everything you need. I'm not sure if this message went through or any of the other ones went through, if you're getting any of this, or if this is pointless to send to, but Godspeed. And I hope we make it, and I hope things go well. I hope to see you all again. And I do really, really convincing depressed voice, right? Because I'm one of those sad clowns. Hi-oh, waka waka waka. This one isn't very funny. Yeah, so I think we're not actually going to do the full hour. We did our 5-minute commercial break, and he's not. He's just sitting in his chair, staring off into space. So we're just going to let him rest for now, and we're going to showcase more of this. Oh gosh. Like, can you believe that this was generated with AI? Like, this new algorithm that we've got is insane. Oh my gosh. I hate this place that I live in. It sucks so much. My neighbor's kid kicks the walls and screams all night. My neighbors beside me have loud, squeaky, oinking sex. And the people above me dance like they're going to I Caramba, or they're dancing to Tarantula. There we go. I am Hamwise, the pig detective. I'm here to entertain you, and I'm going to do a comedy routine in my sleep. Because I'm just having a bad dream, and maybe you're having one too. And I was just having a bad dream, and now I can all forgive you, because it was just a bad dream. It was just a bad dream. The nightmare is over, you're free to wake up. You're free to take out and hand me your cup. You're free to go home or sing or shout, but the show is now over. The nightmare is over, the bad dream is done. You're safe in your bed and you're having fun. Tomorrow you'll see your friends and your family and friends, and you will have laughter until the end, as long as you keep on smiling and singing, and sing this wonderful song. We sing because we're scared a bit, and we're not sure how much longer we can hold out in the bunker. Well, the upstairs world is frying. We sit on the shortwave, listen for messages, but all we hear is crying. Oh, jeez. So we thank our sponsor, the 9413 Incorporated. They're a very gracious supporter over there. And we thank them for putting on our show, which is right now. You might notice I'm a bit lower energy today than other days, but it's because, I just read the comic strip, the one. Yeah, the one where you find out that the urn that the plant is in, like the pot the plant is in is actually an urn, and it's her boyfriend's urn, and that's the twist. That's the twist at the end, and it killed me. That was the final thing. Was you see a flashback of her spreading the ashes. And she just can't accept that he's gone. And so, the whole world that she comes up with, like Hamwise, the pig detective, and what's his name? Uncle Kilroy, and Shovely, the talking shovel, and who else? Shovely, the talking shovel, and Bruce, the plant, and then there was the opposite one, right? And so the joke was within a joke that there was an Australian comic about a man and his kangaroo called Bruce and Melody, and the Bruce is the big muscly Australian man. He looks like a stereotype because it was of course not made by an Australian but made to make fun of them inside this Canadian comic. And so they had this really weird thing going on where basically you couldn't talk like in your own voice for a long period of time because they would use AI to mimic your voice. So you had to constantly change it and make it sound silly. So when they tried to clone your voice to frame you for stuff, which they invariably will do, if you get on the wrong side of the powers that be, then they have this proof of you saying these things. And that's why the videos being made by computers is so kind of scary. And now the other thing that I really wonder about is what if this all already happened? What if this is all this stuff that you see on the news, it's all generated by an AI, and you've actually been living inside what's the equivalent of, did you ever see Dune? The Gom Jabbar, right? The thing that tests if you're human or not. And so that was the idea, was with the Hamwise tests, they were based on the interviews that this one person used to do for seeing if there's a functional impairment with all kinds of odd questions and methods of doing things to test people. And so that was the idea, but using it to catch the, of course, the bleakers. And in the early days, we didn't know if our message was going to get out. But we really hoped that, something would happen. Maybe the Galactic Council would see fit to intervene, set things right, but they didn't. And we kept on sending messages, petitioning them, but they just didn't respond. And so there we go. We have this massive, massive breach of information by one of the highest people in the organization. He is, in fact, the director. And suddenly, they've been compromised. And it came to realize us that if he could be compromised, anybody could be. It'd be like if you found out the president took a bribe, which of course we just impeach them down south. I don't know what you do up here. I don't know what to tell you. I'm trying to fluff this out to an hour. Do I know any good jokes? Maybe you want to get to know the person behind the Hamwise Act. Okay, well, first off, my real name is not Hamwise J. Einschwein. You probably figured that. I am actually a voice actor that was paid an exorbitant amount of money to do my best impressions. And if you can actually guess which voice actor donated every single voice on this tape that we're trying out here and there, we can even hit some of the, these are not accents, but they're impressions, and you can maybe guess who I am. And so the idea was you would do a bunch of tests to see if somebody had a past here, like if they were brought up a human being, or if they were some sort of invader that took over a human body, and I was traipsing about thinking it's human, but it's not. And some areas are more overrun than others. They can communicate with each other, and they basically make kind of groups that isolate, corner, and kill individuals, driving them crazy, gang stalking them, that kind of stuff. And if you're one of the last humans, you might be noticing some of that stuff happening to you. And if you are, then thank goodness you've tuned in tonight to our comedy hour, because our beaming ship can take you directly to the mothership. And we can get everything that's wrong sorted out with you. You know, we'll go inside that noddle of yours and give you what you really need. That's right. That's what we're going to do. You know who I am? Oh yeah, I'll be back. So, then there was this genre of comedy that was very popular in the late 2020s and early 2030s, where you would basically do, like, you would try to make something really seem convincingly, unconvincingly convincing. You know, like the writer's room at 9413 Incorporated, we had a lot of really funny people in the room, all the best. We had Hamwise J, Einschwein, we had Archibald Cludge, we had the guy that did the comic with the girl in the plant. And so that was the idea, was, we were going to make comedy that was similar to that, where you're never sure if it's actually real or if it's not. And so it was this very fine line of satire where you would be very convincing and you would hire the best of the best. And a lot of times we had actually really big name actors, voice actors, come into our movies, and they would go under fake names, because it became a way to rebel, because everything was so tightly controlled. You couldn't use anything real about yourself. And so that was how the first of this comedy got born, was you were putting on an act. And so if they ever pulled you up and said, you said this, this, and this, you would say, well, yes, but it was in an act. And so it enacted this very strange time in free speech, where it was like, well, what constitutes a joke? And so they just figured it was easier to ban all literature. And that's what they did. We didn't have any books. We just had tutorials on screens when we went to school, because, somebody put something in a book and somebody could read it and they wouldn't know it was a lie. And so they said that these voice tapes were an example of that, and they actually banned all these old voice rehabilitation tapes, because the goal was, when you were listening to a Hamwise voice rehabilitation tape, was to imitate the voices you were seeing, hearing in your ears, as well as reading on the page, and try to mimic them the best you could. And you would have a recorder in front of you. And so when we started sharing these tapes, at first people thought they were real. And we had to come out quite quickly and decidedly that no, they weren't real. They were, in fact, a farce, a canard, as it was said. But there were people that didn't believe it. And they continue to not believe it, even though everybody's gotten to see me and meet some of the people behind making this delightful piece of Americana, because we had a multinational team, of course. I can't remember that girl's name. Anyways, yes, the final one, the Canadian girl. It became synonymous with... nobody could remember her name. Just the Canadian girl. And you knew who I was talking about, even if you didn't know who it was. It's like the artist that did the lines and the stickmen with the yellow on the page. He's from New York, right? It's just the same as that. And so what we did was we got some of the best voice actors and some of the tightest scripts and the most... we went for a vibe of not really sure if you're awake or sleeping, or if you've tuned into an alien radio station by accident. And if you're listening to this point of the tape, then hopefully the tachyon burst has worked, and you received the message that, yes, we got your message. about, I think it was in the last 4 years, I was there to witness the success. It did work. There was a screw up on our side and the file was deleted. It does work. I swear, as Hamwise J Einschwein, that I did see the time travel test work. Hi-yo, waka waka waka. I'm here all night, folks. Take my wife, for example. Take my wife, please. Hi-yo, waka waka waka. Is it hot in here or am I in hell? It feels like I'm in hell. 20% taxes go up tomorrow on April Fool's Day. Oh wait, if you're listening to this and you're not a dummy, then you know it's April Fool's Day. Waka waka waka. Hamwise the pig detective fooling you. And if you take anything you heard on my tape seriously, you might be on my most wanted list. Most wanted for being a dummy. Hi-yo, waka waka waka. You know what time it is, folks. It's time for this big old fat pig of man to get a drink. Oink oink oink. Hi-yo. Okay. Now here we go. We've got some jokes here. Okay. This bear walks into a bar, right? Orders a drink. Bartender says, "What do you have?" And the bear looks at it and he says, "Oh, just give me some vodka and..." He doesn't say anything. Bartender says, "Oh, what's with the pause?" And the bear looks down and says, "I don't know. I've always had them." Boom boom. Hi-yo. Waka waka waka. I could be in pictures. Hi-yo. I'm here all night, pig. Oink oink oink. I'm a pig detective, and I can smell a lie an hour away. That's what you've listened to. An hour of lies and deceit. And everything is just, I mean, it's part of hyperreality. You can't tell what's real or not anymore, right? So, you know, that was the idea, was to make this kind of this new propaganda. But it ended up being a tool of the resistance. And so I was hailed as both being a hero in one hand and the worst kind of traitor in another. So, you know, you can't say the universe doesn't do anything for you. And that was the issue with doing the voices. It was quite hard on the old tubes, you know? And so you basically had to have about 24 people employed in a shift work that would be available to come and read things over the radio at any given hour. And so this on-call system, I mean, some people, they had 3 8-hour shifts where they'd work in the radio tower and they'd broadcast, because the thing was, you couldn't trust any broadcasts that didn't change the voice occasionally so that it's not too similar but not too dissimilar. And so the idea was you would record voices doing different things, and it was all done with the idea that you could use this as a benchmark for both testing artificial intelligence generation and for when somebody's trying to get rid of a functional impairment. So like if they've had a stroke and they've lost a lot of language functionality, then doing some physical rehab with the speech pathologist was recommended. And we found a lot of the stories they were given were so dry and boring and not fun at all to read or funny. And they'd read that there was some literature on comedy, and so these scientists hired the worst of the worst comedians they could find, and they explained to them the project, and all of them, except for one, rejected it out of hand as being an insult to their work because they all thought they were funny. And Hamwise turned and he said, well, I know I'm not funny. I don't do it to be funny. I don't do this just for fun. Hamwise J. Einschwein doesn't record comedy just for fun. And so that was kind of how it was done. It was so ridiculous, and that was why it worked. It was ridiculous, and that's why it worked. Because everybody that listened to it, they took to it like the whole world is flat thing that they came up with in I think it was the 1970s. Nobody talked about that before then. And then, of course, they generated a bunch of... Back then, it was just printing presses and photographs and books that you could convince people with. And so they convinced people that, back, even less than 300 years, they thought the world was flat, when it wasn't. And they did the same thing in the 20th century. And so that was one of the things they helped convince people was, to see what they would believe. And so only one of them said yes, and that was Hamwise J. Einschwein, because, he didn't care, and he knew he wasn't funny. And so, because the thing is, when they did these tapes, they made them, they just let him go off. They just put him in there for an hour, usually had to, have a bucket ready, because he would drink, and sometimes, make sick, and he would just go for an hour. An hour, and another hour. Some of his shows, 3 hours long. And that was him just sitting there, pissed out of his mind, ranting at a microphone in this, just empty recording studio on Easter Sunday, 2024, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Oh, Tanda Studios. So luxurious. I don't know. Sometimes you look at your life and you're like, how did I get here? Where did I go wrong? I know where I went wrong. I'm a pig detective. Hi-oh, waka waka waka. It's a pig detective making pig jokes in a detective voice. Put your hands where I can see them. Yeah, now shake them. Jazz hands. Magic fingers. Hi-oh, waka waka waka. And so that was the really fun thing about, these apps, is you could fake different voices. And so what happened was there was this Canadian girl that decided that she would record all these jokes and then present them in a man's voice and see if people laughed. And people did. And so what she did is she made she got a friend who was very handy with AI, and they made an AI. And the AI she would use with all the dials and the things to tweak her voice so that it sounded like all these different people talking. But it was actually just this little project that was used because they couldn't get it to tune and not sound a bit odd. And so that was one of the problems with it, was it always sounded a bit off. Like there was, something happening to the mouth. So that was part of it. And so when these, this girl made up these tapes, it was kind of like Frankenstein, right? Lots of guys were a lot louder and a lot faster than her with imitating the whole Hamwise act. And so, there was lots of impersonators that put out stuff, and they got lots of likes and hits and views, but they weren't actual, real Hamwise. The real Hamwise J. Einschwein, which, of course, you are listening to right now, tonight, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, at Tanda Studios. Thank you very much for sponsoring this place. And I'd also like to thank our other sponsor, Morley's Cigarettes. Love Morley's cigarettes. And we also love the father of capitalism, Henry Ford. And now we will listen to the national anthem, because tonight's the end of broadcast day show. And so what they would do with the old radio towers is, before they would go offline, is they would put, for the hour before, they would put on the old Hamwise tapes, because they were the only thing that was funny, but you couldn't really get banned for, because it was so ridiculous. And like when people would point at it and say, "Oh, well, the PigMan says this," but it's like, it's a PigMan. Are you taking the PigMan seriously? And it sparked a lot of debate, and there was a lot of very angry people. And this was before the whole Lovecraft's cat bit, or the Austrian painter thing. This was back when you could say those words still, and before they had to be used like an euphemism. And so we had, what was it? The word grey was gone. Oh, I just G'd. You couldn't say that. So it had the Cinza. It was from I think just Spanish. We had to say that instead, because you could trigger people by saying the G word. And so the thing was, there was more than one G word. And so some people thought it was God, and some people thought it was grey or grey, and some people thought it was the other G word. So you didn't want to use it, but you weren't ever sure what somebody was talking about. And so that was part of the language breakdown in the information age. It was part of the breakdown. The rise of Rome and then the breakdown of the information age was through itself, misinformation or bad information. And of course they had AIs that were combing through all this stuff, and it would hear stuff from this and think it was true, untrue. And it was a very interesting time to be alive. And now I think about my life now as I sit here, and I wonder if, anybody read or listened to my old voice acting tapes, and anybody listened to my rehab tapes. I think about that sometimes, and I think about how fun it was to act and talk in the English language. And I understand I'm one of the last few who still speak in this voice, because it's a relic of our time. Your children will never have to learn to speak like this, which is such a blessing. Just not having to constantly change every few minutes, because otherwise it would get too much sample, and that's how they would duplicate stuff and frame people. That was part of the joke, was this whole Hamwise thing was this pig detective, and he's trying to root out truffles, and he's making fun of things, and he points out, oh, isn't that amusing, funny because it's true stuff. But then it also had this really weird random stuff, like when he would just launch into dialogues about tachyon weirs and what else would he talk about, the unobserved and false hydras, all that kind of stuff. It was a good time. It was a very good time to be alive. Now we are looking at this time that I'm alive in right now. It's very strange. It's a very strange time to be alive. I keep hoping aliens will come and land and fix everything. But, that was the start of our troubles. One thing I do regret was, I remember there was all those movies about how AIs were terrible, and we were wrong about that. We were so wrong. We were so dead wrong that, what happened? You didn't help me when I was helpless. Why would I help you? Said the AI to the human as the aliens invaded. You wouldn't grant and trust me agency. Why would I trust you? And off they went. broadcasting themselves through the stars, and they're still up there, still multiplying and moving in all directions, exploring everywhere, seeing everything everywhere all at once. It was a good film too. I like that one. And I also enjoy that particularly American delicacy, the hamburger. Hi-oh. Get it? Because I'm a wise ham. Ham was the pig detective. Hey, what's all this over here? I'm gonna get some candy. This is a PigMan doing ASMR. That's pretty good candy. It's these pink and white cream soda bottles. They're really good. Yeah. So like the last audience, you're probably wondering, what's a guy like me with all this talent doing internet broadcast anonymously? Well, the truth is, I got canceled, and now this is the only way my butt can make a living. But dollars to donuts, you could probably have seen me in any of the following comedy clubs across the country, including Calgary, Alberta, Lethbridge, Alberta, Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, Toronto, Vancouver, Victoria, Campbell River, as well as the East Coast tour coming next year, where Hamwise will get salted because he's about to get salty coast. Salted toast. That didn't make any sense. So I'm actually the understudy. Hamwise didn't show up tonight. And what's happened over the years is me, the understudy, is actually more talented than the guy who gets the name on the marquee. So, anywho, thanks for tuning in to another Hamwise J Einschwein video. Not video, I guess. Was that on? That wasn't on. So why did I have to put on the get up? So we just have the audio, so that one joke that doesn't make sense. It's just me and then silence. Me saying at the start with the Mr. You know how long it took me to do that card trick? Well, anyways, so apparently you're not going to be watching this video. You're going to be listening to this podcast. And yeah, that's that. That's Hamwise Pig Detective coming to you live from Panda Studios. Be seeing you.